Joining me in the studio is Angela Mancini. She is Managing Director of Global Client Services for Control Risk. Angela, let's pick up on where Simon left off there. 2016, it's wide open, but of course we do have a non-declared front runner now.
Yes, we do.
What's your thoughts on where her position is, Hillary Clinton, of course, we're talking about, and for the rest of the Democrat Party?
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting couple of years. I think Simon's exactly right. I think we turn immediately on November 5th straight into the 2016 election. The Republicans actually don't have a clear front runner. There's no, I would go so far as to say, no real credible candidate that's coming out on top. Hillary Clinton is it for the Democrats. There's been some talk that people may look to her, or the White House may look to her a little bit more to actually help guide some of the foreign policy decisions, with the thinking being, if she runs and would likely win in 2016, at least the way the landscape looks now, she's going to inherit a lot of the problems that we're seeing from the Middle East to Russia, Ukraine, to any number of hotspots across the globe. So there may be a look towards her to help potentially even guide some of this strategy. So
a continuity of sorts in that aspect. But the Republicans' win last night wasn't really an easy win for them as well. What does this say about the American electorate?
Yeah, it's a difficult time in American politics. I mean, let's give credit where credit's due. The Republicans had a great showing. They won more races than expected. They won by higher margins than expected. But I wouldn't go so far as to say this is a mandate for the Republicans. I mean, if you look at what actually is happening, first of all, a lot of the states where the races were that they won were already Republican leaning. So if you look at the landscape of the U.S. and where the elections were happening, it was one of the worst landscapes for the Democrats that we've seen in many, many years. And also, if you look at the exit poll results, 1/4 of those who actually voted Republican said they were unhappy with the trajectory of the Republican Party. So I definitely wouldn't go so far as to say this is any kind of Republican mandate. What I would say is the common theme is certainly unhappiness with Washington, unhappiness with gridlock. There's much been said about Obama's approval ratings, which are in the low 40%, where they've actually been quite steady for a period of time. But if you look at Congress's approval ratings, they're 14%. So I think the clear message is everyone's unhappy. Everyone wants to vote out the incumbents for the most part, and everybody's tired of Washington gridlock.
Okay, so where does this leave the president then? We have 2 more years to his term. The lame duck period begins. What else can he do realistically? Well,
it's going to be tough. Certainly he's not going to be he doesn't have the political capital to put forth any significant legislation, unlike we saw in 2008 and 2009. I don't think the Republicans are going to put forth any major legislation either. So I don't think we're going to be in a situation where they're putting forth big new ideas that then Obama's going to be forced in some way to veto. And the Republicans have been seen, as you know, really as the party of no for the last 6 years, and their strategy has been to block any Democratic moves more than doing any of their own. So I don't think we're going to see a whole lot there. But I do think there are some bright spots of potential collaboration, I think, in areas like immigration reform, potentially corporate tax reform, certainly trade. When we get to 2016, I think the Republicans are going to want to be able to look back and have something to show for these 2 years. Certainly Obama's in a period of wanting to burnish his legacy. So there's incentive on both sides to come to the table, at least with some of these issues where they might be able to find some common ground.
Very good point on that one, Angela. For the president as well, we have this editorial today from Today China, and let me just read this. Calling Mr. Obama a banal leader who has done an insipid job. Very harsh words, especially coming to a couple of days to the start of the APEC summit in Beijing.
Yeah, I saw that. I was quite surprised with the timing. Certainly I think that might be playing to a domestic audience as well. As I read through the op-ed, there was a sentence in there about saying that the Americans have been too lazy to reform, and that's part of the reason they're having some of these electoral problems, or rather the political divisiveness that we see. So certainly that might be something that's playing more to a domestic audience. The other point might be that sometimes the Chinese political leadership might look at the U.S. Electorate and leadership through a slightly different prism than it is in reality, and so they might actually be trying to score points with some of the new Republican leaders that are coming to the fore, even though that might not be the case with the actual op-ed.
But wouldn't a messed up America be more beneficial for the U.S., or is that not the case?
Well, I think the U.S.-China, the U.S.-China relationship, in my view, is so critical to both countries. Certainly, they might be happy to snipe at each other along the margins, but I think both countries are so critical to each other, particularly from an economic point of view, that I don't really see any deterioration in relationship depending on who's in power. You know, I will say that Asian governments and Chinese government, the Chinese government as well, tends to view American leadership as more beneficial to them when it's Republican. Republicans are tended to be seen as more pro-business and less worried about issues like environmental issues and labor issues and things like that. So it may be the case in China that they're actually looking forward to working potentially with more Republican leadership.
Thank you very much for your insights, Angela. Angela Mancini, Managing Director of Global Client Services.